From the heart of trucker America, my boy Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist Capitalist.
As the left becomes less religious, they become more statist. And as the right becomes more religious, they still become more statist.
Whenever you add government, you by default remove community.
Most of the blame goes on Obama, but it actually starts with Bush, right? Like in 2006.
Is Reed sitting very still, or did his phone go out?
And I have no intention of keeping any promise that I make.
It's bad that the state is as big as it is.
Hey guys, I hope you can hear me well. I'm doing this live, so this is always a complete shit show, but we'll see how it goes. I've got my friend Michael with me, who did episode 1 with me back in May of 2020. So here we are 100 episodes later, and we're just going to recap. So how's it going today, Mike?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Yeah, Mike, he comes into Salt Lake City every once in a while. It's, I don't know, it's not consistent at all. So sometimes he's been here like 3 times within 1 month, but he's having truck issues, so he's stuck here.
My truck is in the shop, and I'm getting a new oil pan gasket put on, even though I just had one put on back in January, but apparently it's not good enough to pass the DOT inspection, so now I'm getting it done again here in Salt Lake.
There we go. The struggle of the Libertarian truck driver continues in both of our lives.
Right.
So, there's that. So you have been just as aggressive as Tulsi Gabbard with getting your podcast out.
I know, right?
So how's that going?
Well, I learned from the best, right? You tease something and then never produce it, and you'll never be criticized, right?
Yeah, I'm already getting some criticism because she's agreed to come on my show, but obviously I haven't gotten any updates as to when that's going to happen. So I got a comment yesterday. It was pretty funny. They were like, Reed's interview with Tulsi is going to be like Joe Rogan's interview with Kanye West. He's going to talk about it for a year, and then it's finally going to happen, and it's going to be very underwhelming. And I was like, well, that might be true, because I know a lot of my viewers might not know Tulsi Gabbard very well, or at least on a personal level. Scheduling things or expecting shit to happen is a disappointing venue to be in with her. So you'll just have to stay tuned. By the way, while anyone's watching, if the audio is not good enough, please let me know. There's not going to be anything I can do about it, but I'll just end the stream. So just say something in the comments if you can't hear us.
Right.
But we just rewatched episode 1 just to get an idea of where our heads were 11 months ago now, because it was May 20th. And I don't know what today is. It's we got a comment. Let's see if we got
April.
Hope you make 100 more. Okay, cool.
Right.
As I said, guys, if you can't hear us, let us know. But there's it was May 20th. What's today? April 18th or something like that.
Yep.
April 18th. So yeah, about 11 months ago, we put out our first video. So May 20th of 2020. The lockdowns have been going on for about 2 months at this point.
Yep.
The CARES Act had already been signed into law. I think they had drafted the HEROES Act, but it never became law. Luckily, not that it matters, because they made up for it later on down the road.
Right.
But there was like, I had been stewing for like 2 months in March when the CARES Act passed and the lockdown started happening. I was going nuts, and I was talking with you a lot. We were both listening to Peter Schiff and different economists who were actually talking about all the corporatism that was in these bailouts and how this was just going to be a replay of 2008 all over again.
Yep.
And I was screaming to my 65 friends on Facebook who were like my aunt and uncle and, friend from high school or whatever, who just didn't care. And I was like, okay, if I want to ever get somewhere, I've got to create an audience here. So I actually did start a Twitter account, and I kind of did that for a couple months until I finally, built up enough energy and contempt for what was going on that I was like, okay, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. So May 20th, we did our first video. And I'd say, I mean, there's been a little bit of dressing around the edges on our opinions, but after watching that, I mean, I didn't feel cringy seeing it and thinking like, oh God, that's me. It's like, yeah, no, I
Right.
kind of still feel that way.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. You know, I've talked a little bit on various episodes about how I bounce around between, okay, some days I'm full anarcho-capitalist and don't think we need a government at all, and we just need to, and then I go back and I see what's going on in the national stage in Washington, and I'm being like, you know, we need some more libertarian voices up there to try to cut this state out of our lives and give us a little more freedom. You know?
Yeah, so we talked about a few individuals who I've talked about a lot throughout the existence of this show, who would be Rand Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, and Justin Amash. So my philosophy with politicians has pretty much always been that you should not peg a value to a particular politician, and your opinion of that person shouldn't remain static. It should rely on what they do. I mean, your opinion of anybody should rely on, you know, what they do throughout their lives. I mean, this idea that this is what we hate about the two-party system. Like, oh, I like Donald Trump, or, oh, I like Obama. And then they get in there and they don't do anything that their supporters wanted, but they still love them because they're their guy. And in my opinion, we can't do that as libertarians either. And luckily we've had Ron Paul, who is like the most consistent motherfucker that's ever been around.
Right.
So, you know, that makes it easy. But out of the three, Justin Amash, Rand Paul, and Tulsi Gabbard, I've got to say that overall I've been the most impressed with Justin Amash as far as consistency goes. That doesn't mean I agree with him on everything he does, but I feel like he cucks for the establishment the least, especially lately.
Well,
But
you can't forget Thomas Massey.
yeah,
He's still my favorite congressman, and I'd go to bat for him, even though I don't live in Kentucky. I don't think I've ever actually met him. No, I haven't met him, but you know, he's the man. I like a lot of his ideas, and I like him as a person, and a lot of his personal what's the word? A lot of his personal issues, you know, related to food, you know, because he authored the Prime Act, which would open up, allows states to, if you produce the food in that state and it's consumed in that state, it shouldn't count as interstate commerce, so it shouldn't fall under the USDA requirements. And that would have opened the door. Naturally, it didn't pass, but, you know,
Right.
These are a lot of the things that I'm very well interested in the farming world.
Yeah. I think, he is another guy. I haven't followed him quite as closely on this show, I don't think. He hasn't been in the inner circle as much. But, you know, there are times where I've disagreed with him for sure. Like, one would have been I think it was the MORE Act on federally descheduling marijuana. So there's been some times where I really think he's messed up. But the other thing I've said is, just like we shouldn't obsess over somebody and love them no matter what they do, I think when somebody is on your side 80, 90, 95, whatever the percentage is of the time, and then they fuck something up, I don't think we should just throw them out the window either. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it seems like people think their thinking is so binary. Someone is either with you or against you.
Right.
And in my mind, like, nobody is really with you or against you. Like, it's fluid, you know.
Right.
Hopefully they're going to be with you most of the time, and that's how you create alliances and coalitions.
There's no nuance with that, you know.
Right.
There's no room for, okay, you know, the world isn't black and white. There's shades of gray. There's a lot of different people. There's a lot of different opinions. Some are better than others. And, you know, we're all just out here trying to figure it out and see which ones we like, and, you know, try to do more of that and less of the other one, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have gone through a transformation since episode 1 that has mostly kind of come to light in the last few months, but I did it was a slow transition. And if anyone has been following me for the past 11 months, you will have seen it come out in different episodes. And I have finally rounded on the corner on admitting that I don't think the government is a tool for solving anything anymore. And I think when I started the show, one area where I thought it still needed to exist was with environmental regulations, and then a couple other things like the military and fire departments and police or whatever. But after doing some reading, having very intriguing guests on the show to dissuade me, I have finally rounded the corner and admitted, you know what, I think, if I don't think that the government is suited to handle minor things, why in the world do I think it's suited to handle the biggest things? That's been my biggest transformation throughout the existence of this show. I was wondering, do you have one? Like, do you have a mind frame that's shifted in the last year? Or
Honestly, like I said before, I bounce around a lot. I've been at this game. I got red pilled by Ron Paul in 2007, 2008. So, I've had a lot of highs. I've had a lot of lows. I've had a lot of people who I thought would have finally, yes, we finally need to get behind this person. And, the thing I liked most about that first campaign, 2007, is I felt like I wasn't alone. I wasn't the only person who thought that maybe there's something to this whole libertarian idea thing. And, right now, honestly, I'm seeing that with the Wall Street silver movement. So that's what's been holding my attention these days. I'm really big on what's going to happen with the silver market. Hopefully it breaks and we can finally break the chains of the big banks, JP Morgan and all the other, players in that world that are manipulating our currency and slowly eroding the value of our money. And, it's a big conspiracy, but, what do I know? I'm just a truck driver.
Hey, me too, man.
Right.
So, boy, if you had told me 11 months ago that my show would be where it is now, I don't think I'd believe it. I mean, I am humbled by how far I've made it. And the reason I'm not, I don't want to give myself too much credit is because I'm really not that smart or that well-read. I guess I am compared to the general public, but I shouldn't have the audience I do. Like, that says a lot more about the current times than it says about me. At least I think so. And, you just can't find any consistent source of information. You can't find anybody who deals in reality. You can't find anybody who does any research. So if you do any of those things, then you're already ahead of the curve. But I do those things, and I try to come at things from the way that I honestly observe them, and that pisses some people off. But it seems like even people in the independent media at my level, like people who have fewer than 10,000 subscribers, they try to ride waves of popularity or hot takes on certain things to get somewhere. And I just haven't done that. I've just kind of said what I've thought. And, the whole idea of like unity on big ticket issues, that hasn't always been a home run, especially in the Libertarian Party. But now it is. Like, now it's starting to catch a wave and it's starting to be popular. So I would just tell people, like, be yourself, say what you actually think. Don't be afraid of changing your mind if you come across information that persuades you. Like with me, that was, the Mises Caucus. I was wrong about the Mises Caucus because I had initial altercations with them online, and it was from people who don't represent the caucus at an official level. It was, it wasn't a full picture of what's going on. So don't be afraid to have someone say, hey, you're really wrong about this. You need to talk it through. That's all great. But also, like, try to find what grounds you and try to be consistent. And I'm not going to name any names, but I certainly know people who I've done videos with too, who are not grounded in anything, and they just kind of bounce around, whatever interesting thing comes around. And that's not just one or two people. It's a lot of people that I've done videos with and who've had me on their show and different places. Like, just say, your philosophy needs to have a foundation. You need to actually stand for something, because if you don't stand for anything, then you can't stand against anything. That's been my takeaway the last year. That's where I've really seen value. I was wondering if you've had any observations. For those of you who don't know, Mike is my closest friend when it comes to this type of stuff. Like, right. we talk all the time. We're both truck drivers. We've had he's my Scott Horton if I'm Dave Smith. Like, he and I have had multiple hour-long discussions about things, and we've really talked through this shit. So yeah, I was wondering, Mike, what are your takeaways from how things have gone the last year?
Well, I'm really happy with how the channel's grown. It's one thing to produce content; it's another thing to have people like it and watch it and comment and get involved. And I'm really happy to see a lot of your growth and progression over the years. I'm a little older than you are, so I've been around the block a little bit, so it's nice to know that we live in a world where someone who just drives a truck and has a job and an opinion can open up a phone or a laptop and just sit there and talk and say what's on their mind, and other people will say, yeah, I agree with that guy. Yeah, it's nice to be in that place and have that medium to talk to people. I'm still working on my own channel, but someday I'll get there.
Yeah, well, we'll be advertising the shit out of that when that happens. So I have found an intrinsic connection to libertarianism through truck driving. Like, it's just, I said the other day on Twitter, if you want to, I was talking about the cops. I said, if you want to hate the cops, become a truck driver or a skateboarder. But I've also said in the past, if you aren't a libertarian and you want to be, then become a truck driver, because you want to talk about compliance over safety, just following the rules when they don't make any sense, and you can't question them because they're the rules, and you have to pay a fine or get a warning or get put out of service over stuff that's really not dangerous, stuff that doesn't damage the road any more than the way they'd want. Our jobs are a little different. You haul reefer trailer, I haul heavy equipment, so there's different regulations, but they still exist both ways.
I've been driving since 2011, 2012, and not only are the rules ironclad and absolute, but they keep changing them. So if you keep changing them and you keep moving the needle on what's required of us, and we have to keep relearning everything, it just makes our life more difficult. Between hours of service regulations, weight regulations, weigh stations, the latest one is now all of our logs are electronic. We're not allowed to use paper logs anymore, but you absolutely have to keep a paper log in your truck just in case your electronic log goes down.
Right.
You have to be able to produce a card that says all of the instructions on how to use the electronic log at the time that you're getting inspected. Mm-hmm. And it's a hassle, but it is what it is.
Right.
It's part of the job, and if you like driving truck and making those big paychecks, sometimes you have to bite your lip. And
yeah, so I think Chris got a little excited when I said you haul reefer.
Not that's actually not allowed on the federal level right yet. So that would be against the rules. That would be drug trafficking.
Just in case anyone, I'm assuming that was a joke, but just in case anyone doesn't know, that's a refrigerated trailer.
Mm-hmm.
That's
foodstuffs for the most part.
Yeah. Sometimes he moves dead bodies for the Clintons, after. Whoa. Oh man. But yeah, I think it's cool to have people who are working real jobs out in the field on the ground who can talk about this shit, because so often it's somebody who's disconnected, even if they're cool and down to earth. Like, if they're not actually out in the field with you, you still don't necessarily take them as seriously. So if you can have someone who like literally does your job and is telling you that we need to end the Federal Reserve and end the IRS and end the wars, then that can gravitate a little bit more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But so you've been driving since 2011?
I started with this company in 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started driving in 2013. So I was 18. So you were what?
32 when I started driving. So just a little older.
Just a little older than you. Yeah. Oh well. But yeah, what I have seen a decline in the ability of drivers since I started. When I started, there were pretty much no automatic trucks. The ELDs were just coming out, I think, in 2013. But a lot of people were still getting their licenses independently. They weren't going to school.
Yeah.
That's pretty much gone now. Now it's like you get it on an automatic, you go to school. Most I don't know what percent, 70, 80% of new trucks, I think, now are automatics.
Yeah, the industry's moved in that direction. And, even my own the company I drive for, you can order a truck with a manual transmission, but you have to put a down payment on it in order to get that truck. And you're not allowed to do training like the rest of us, because most of the newbies that come in have an automatic only restriction, so they can't even drive a manual. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, by the way, guys, you've seen in my intro, I do drive a manual. I will not drive an automatic, and it's not, well, I shouldn't lie. It's not exclusively a pride thing. It's partially a pride thing. I will admit that. Like I'm not a steering wheel holder like Mike is now.
Well,
so.
I drove manual for going about 6 years before I got my automatic truck. And it took some getting used to. I kept putting my foot through the floor where the clutch is whenever I'd come up to a stop. And, people look at me funny when I'm driving,
Yeah.
But
Did you ever slam the brake instead of the clutch? I've done that once.
No, I haven't done that.
Oh, yeah, that's the worst. Like you're
don't make that.
I've reached for the stick shift and slammed on the brake with my left foot. And, because I have... my previous job, we had a mix of manuals and automatics. That was a line work company I worked for. And when I started, it was like probably around 50% manual automatic. By the time I left, there were only like 3 trucks that were still manuals.
Right.
But I remember they got an automatic tractor trailer, which like when they switched the dump trucks from manual to automatic, that was the initial thing that pissed me off. I was like, come on, a dump truck is supposed to be a manual.
Right.
But then when they did it with the tractor trailer, like that really screwed me up. And I was driving it, and I slammed my left foot into the brake and reached for the non-existent stick shift and probably scared the hell out of everyone behind me.
There's been a number of times where early on I'd be going down the road and I'd reach for the stick shift and it wouldn't be there, and now it's all just a paddle on the steering column. But I'm used to it now, and I think I could go back to driving a manual if I had to, but I'd probably have a rough time of it. I wouldn't. I used to be able to go from, when you're first pulling out, you go through 3 or 4 gears in like less than 5 seconds, and I'd never skip gears. But my new truck, it revs way high on first gear, then it jumps right to 4th gear, and then it does things that I wouldn't do if I was actually pulling the strings on it. But you learn how to make it do the things you want when you're climbing hills and stuff like that, because I don't like the idea of skipping gears when I'm climbing hills. I want to grab every ounce of torque I can put on those wheels when I can. So
yeah, we've got my number 1 fan, Archaic Skids, in the chat. And by the way, I know you complain that I ignore your trolling all the time. This is a video where you can troll if you want. I might make a few comments, but your comment is actually incorrect. Standard vehicles are anti-theft models. The pickup truck that I drove here is a 94 Toyota with a 5-speed, and it got stolen from me about 6 months ago now. Luckily I found it again. But in general, you are correct. Like I don't know. That, like I admitted, that's a pride thing. Like, I will own a manual vehicle as long as I can, and I don't think I'd want to drive an automatic tractor trailer. It's just like,
honestly, I had a really hard time going back and forth between driving a stick car versus the truck, because when you're used to driving a truck, everything smaller than that seems very weird, especially when you drive as many miles as I have. I've been doing this for a long time. When I'm out on the road, I go out on the road for 3-4 weeks at a time, then I come home again. So 80% of my time is away from home.
yeah.
I mean, the truck I have right now has 600,000 miles on it, and I've put that on since 2017. So
Yeah. I typically go out for 6 or 7 days at a time, 5 or 6 days at a time. So usually I'm not home in Utah at all. That's why I do so many of my episodes from the road for everyone watching. And that's why I also do videos, because, I mean, trying to get involved with the Libertarian Party, I am a member. I'm a dues-paying member of the Utah Libertarian Party, but I didn't even make it to the convention last weekend because I was in California. Meetings? Yeah.
Have you been to any? Do you know any local libertarians in your area?
I do. But I tried to go to one meeting, didn't make it. Tried to go to the convention last weekend, but I was in California. It's pretty hard to make it to meetings and to actually be a member who can organize things. So this is my way of being involved. So, I mean, I guess that's...
I can speak personally for my area back in New York. I had been... as I started as a Ron Paul Republican, and then I'd flirt with the Libertarian Party a little bit on the side when, the election season came around for president. First it was Bob Barr, then it was, I think, Gary Johnson. I think there might have been another one in there at some point, but
Bob Barr was 2008, right?
Bob Barr was 2008.
It was 2004. It was that... sucked. I forget what his name was.
Was that Harry Brown?
No, he was 96 in 2000.
I was, prior to me getting red pilled by Ron Paul, I was a George Bush pro-war neoconservative.
Same here. I was younger, but I was still an idiot. So
yeah, I've heavily turned tail on some of those ideas. But thinking about it now, but what I was going to say was, my own area, I remember going to a Libertarian meetup meeting in 2012, and I was the only person there who was in their 20s, and the other people who had been there for 15-20 years were just like, oh hey, good to see some young blood here. Yeah. And then I never went back, So now the latest iteration, I went to a Libertarian meetup around the time Larry Sharp was running in New York State. And there were 6-7 people my age there, that were all interested in doing something, organizing. There's an actual culture of people that I can get along with, and but the trouble is I'm never home, right? And it's hard to get home. It's hard to get to do meetings. It's hard to do any kind of grassroots anything. There was a protest for vaccine passports up in New York State a couple weeks ago that I wanted to go to, but I had too many things going on because there were things to do on the farm when I'm home, and when I'm not working on the farm, I got to go back to work to pay for the farm. So
yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is it's not like when you're gone all the time like we are, when you're home, you've got to do stuff that people do normally during the week. So it's pretty hard, especially when you also have a show, that kind of takes up literally all of your free time. I was on a show. I was on Elaine Jones' show yesterday, and the question that was asked was, what do you do to wind down and relax And I was like, for the last year, nothing, because it's been pretty bad.
I look at my phone and then I lay down and go to sleep.
Yep, pretty much. It's driving, tweeting, and YouTubing right now.
Right.
I only went skiing once this year, and you guys can't see them, but we're looking right at the mountains outside of Salt Lake right now, and they're right there. But when you're not around much and you can't get out there, it kind of sucks. What do we got here? Respect to dedicating fellas. Thank you. It means a lot. Thanks for the subscriptions. Sorry, we're near a hospital in Salt Lake City, so sorry about the chopper.
It's Airwolf coming to take us down.
But as usual, this is how my videos go. I usually have a little bit of real world stuff going on that fucks them up a little bit. But yeah, no, I appreciate the following I've gotten and the enthusiasm too. It's been kind of cool. Like I've got fans, which is kind of funny. Like it's not something I envisioned myself having ever. But it's I have some hope. Like I feel like the liberty movement is waking up again. So you and I, another thing we both have in common that we didn't really talk about is we both supported Tulsi in 2020. Mm-hmm. And what a lot of people don't seem to get about that is that it's not that says more about the liberty movement than it's said about us, right? Like the fact that we were supporting a Democrat who supported Medicare for all and gun control and
for a little while,
all these things,
right,
was a statement about like how bad things are getting. Like, because we had Donald Trump, who I know, and you voted for him in 2016. Like he did not keep his promises. He didn't fight the establishment.
Nope.
He was a full-on corporatist. He didn't rein in any of the wars. And then you had all these friggin' idiots lined up on the Democrat side. So it was like, okay, what do you do? We're gonna. So that's where we were a year and a half ago. I am actually feeling optimistic now. Like things, I feel not that we're gonna win the presidency or something, but I feel like the liberty movement is having a reawakening, and maybe it's just my echo chamber or my bubble or something, but I feel like people are starting to see through the bullshit because the authoritarians are they're getting lazy.
Things got really amped up to 11 with this whole COVID business.
Yeah.
I don't think I remember seeing this much government oppression. How much power governors have, how much, they're telling us, okay, you can finally open up the bars and stay out till 11 now instead of just 10 o'clock because that extra hour is.
Yeah.
But you still have to close at 11. It's like, well, why does the governor have to tell me how to run my business? Why can't people just do what they're going to do,
Right.
I mean, and there was a very paternal attitude that King Andrew was having over his citizens, and I'm happy to see the wagons were circling around him, but I just hope he doesn't run. I hope we find a way to replace him when he runs for election again.
So is there any sort of movement like the recall Gavin Newsom? Are they working on that with Andrew at all right now?
Well, he had a number of sexual harassment claims filed against him. I don't know how much substance there was from him, but usually that starts to crop up when people start seeing the writing on the wall that he's losing support and something that could be damaging. I mean, this is how Epstein kind of ran his business on the whole blackmail thing, or at least that's the theory anyway, because nobody tells us anything about him. It doesn't make the news anymore.
Right.
But I imagine there was something nefarious going on.
Yeah. My boss just texted me. I'm going to Santa Paula, California tomorrow.
Oh,
so
boy.
There we go. Let's see. We got a question here. How is the takeover of the LP with Dave? What stages are there? Is there an election coming up that will be a milestone moment to gauge how the goal is progressing? So, full disclosure, I'm actually not a member of the Mises Caucus. I'm a non-denominational libertarian. I'm very friendly with a lot of people in the Mises Caucus, like Dave Smith, Scott Horton, Pete Quinones, Angela McCardle. I'm not going to join a caucus just because I feel like the benefits are at least equal with the division that they bring. It's kind of, I talk about how I used to be religious a while ago, and the churches, have all these different denominations when they're all Christians and they're all supposed to be working toward the same goal. They all believe the same basic things, but they let the minutia divide them and turn themselves into enemies. And I've really seen that a lot with the caucuses. I do like the Mises caucus, how it seems to have a goal of bringing radical messaging and actually getting stuff done, because that's something libertarians have sucked at. So I will be supporting Angela McArdle for LP chair. I don't hate Joseph Bishop Henchman, but I'm just not really that big of a fan. I think he's kind of just more the same, and I think we need some radical new messaging. So as far as your question of any elections coming up, that's the biggest one for 2022, Angela McArdle. She has my support. I've had her on the show. You guys can watch that. I forget what number episode it is, but I like what she has to say. I think she's sensible, but she's also principled and radical where it matters. Like in my interview with her, she was talking about how we don't need to focus on driver's licenses right now. It's not really the most pressing issue. We need to focus on the lockdowns and economic issues like bailouts and gun control, things that are really big right now. And I couldn't agree more. I think that matters more than going after the Libertarian Party of Kentucky for putting out an edgy tweet or whatever. So that's my answer there. By the way, if you have Ryan, if you're interested, watch episode, I think it's 99, No Caucus for Old Men, and you can make any sexual jokes about that you want, but it's with me, Justin O'Donnell, and Joe Evans, and all three of us are caucusless. So you can go watch that, and we talk about why we haven't joined caucuses, what we think about all the infighting, and what we think about the direction of the party. Let's see. I don't believe a Newsom recall would mean anything. LA and San Francisco elected him. They'll elect the next guy too.
They need to split the state into multiple states.
3 states.
I would like to see that. I want to move to the state of Jefferson. Because Thomas Jefferson was my favorite founding father. So the idea of a state named after him would be pretty cool.
There you go. It's the same with New York, right? They ought to split.
They ought to split New York too. I'd love to see something like that happen, but it's made its way to the legislature and it was left off. So who knows?
Yeah, I mean, New York, you could really just do 2, right? Just like, or you could even just give New Jersey, Manhattan.
Give Manhattan to New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And,
and give them DC too. Like,
they could.
It.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because. That's where all the tax revenue comes from, and that's where all the policy decisions are made. And
so does one problem equal the? Does a problem equal the benefits out? Like, does it kind of break even if you got rid of the tax revenue, but you don't have the dumb laws anymore?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say because I've lived in New York State. Most of my life, it's hard to know what the rest of the world is like, other than the fact that I drive around in a truck all day and see it from inside my cab. I don't really interact with the outside world that much,
Yeah, that's another thing, guys. I have been a Utah resident since, October of last year, but I am never in Salt Lake City or Utah. I mean, I still know New Hampshire way better than Utah. I'm in Utah 1 or 2 days out of the week at most. I'll be in Montana, Idaho, California, Arizona, whatever. I'm all over the place. So that's why I stick to mostly national issues instead of state issues, because honestly, I'm out of the loop on some of it because I'm never here. But obviously I vote and everything. You guys should go follow John Molnar, by the way. He was running for my district in Utah. I got to meet him once, had him on the show a few times. Great guy. He's moving to Florida, which sucks. I don't know if he's in the stream right now, but John, you're the best. Let's see. New Jersey doesn't want anything but New York State. Well, there you go.
I mean, you drive around those areas, the country, you can hardly tell the difference. To be perfectly honest.
Yeah, I agree with that. I've been all over the country. I've been to all 50 states, most of them several times, like everywhere in every state, pretty much. The closest place to the depiction of hell that I can imagine is Trenton, New Jersey, on Interstate 95. It's just like the sky is just on fire with refineries and power plants, and oh man, it's disgusting. But by the way, since we're both truckers, we've seen the country so much, what's your favorite state to drive in?
People ask me, what's your favorite place to go? And I always say I'd like to go home. That's always my answer. But, that's where my wife lives. And, we have a house full of dogs and horses and other critters running around that need our attention. So, my wife takes care of all that. And I drive around. In terms of, ease, I like driving out west a lot more because it's a lot easier to rack up miles, when your cities are 100, 150 miles apart. Then, and the scenery is really something stunning to look at. I just drove through Cabbage Patch, Oregon, up just outside Pendleton, Oregon, and it was pretty cool to look out and see all that beautiful scenery,
Yeah.
I don't get to see stuff like that when I'm driving around, upstate New York too much. But, there's Adirondack National Park or Adirondack Park up there where we could go see that stuff. But, when I'm home, I just do my work and then I go back. Yeah. I don't really get a chance to go do much leisure time things these days. But
yeah, you and me both, man. I think my favorite state to drive through is Montana.
It's gorgeous. I love it.
And it partially because the roads aren't that hilly, but you get a ton of views of the mountains. Like, it's pretty flat on the roads.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
There's a couple passes that take a lot to get over, but for the most part, it's flat, but you have mountains everywhere, and it's just gorgeous. It's beautiful.
I like coming to Salt Lake City because it's like a bowl of all these mountains all the way around above everything you look at. You know, it's kind of, except from what's behind us, but
right. Yeah, we should have tried to get the mountains in the background, but the sun was in the wrong direction, so it wouldn't work. Yeah, I'm so lucky though to be a trucker out west because it's actually why I moved out west. Everyone asks me, why did you leave New Hampshire? Because I specifically wanted to drive truck and haul heavy equipment, wide loads, things like that. But it's such a pain out east because the bridges are all low, the weight restrictions are way crazier, the permits are way harder to get. Like out here, we have an annual permit for Colorado. I think it costs like $60. It's good up to, I think, 200 feet long, 200,000 pounds, 17 feet wide, and 16 feet tall. So anything that fits within those dimensions, you can just throw on the trailer and go. You don't even have to get a special permit or anything. You might need a pilot car depending on where you are, but like out east, it would be weeks sometimes to get permits like that ahead of time, and you'd have to pay hundreds of dollars, and you have to have two escorts.
I was going to say police escorts, all that kind of stuff. I've seen kinds of crazy things like,
but that's why I'm out west now. We gotta. Let's see. When will you have Tulsi on your show? I am a libertarian and I'm in Utah. Well, that's awesome,
three of
man.
us.
That's three libertarians in Utah right now.
Right now.
As far as having Tulsi on the show, this is Tulsi we're talking about. So this is why I posted photo evidence that she agreed to it. I don't know how many of you guys are on Locals, but that's something that Dave Rubin started up. That she started her own platform on there with him. So I asked her on Locals if she'd be willing to come on my show, and we're friends from being on the campaign. I feel comfortable calling us friends. And so I just said, hey, I'd love to have you on the show. We definitely don't agree on everything, but I still have a lot of respect for you. I'd love to have you on and talk. And so she replied, I would love to at some point, but I can't tell you when, but we will do it. So that type of answer from Tulsi means she will do it, but it could literally be a year from now. I mean, I have no idea. She can't even get her own podcast off the ground right now, and she's been talking about that for, I don't know, 3 months maybe.
I think she spends a lot of time surfing.
Yeah, which can't blame her after getting out of Congress,
Right.
But when I do have her on, I hopefully it'll be an interesting conversation. I'm not going to ask her about Assad or her Title IX bill or whatever, because I honestly don't give a shit, and you can find that anywhere else. I would like to talk to her. I want to hear her what she thought about having so many libertarians support her, because Mike and I were not anomalies. There were a lot who crossed over, and I wanted to ask her about if her mind's changed on things like guns, because that was one thing we really went hard on her over. And, there's other issues that I wonder if she's moving on them at all. So it'll be that's what I want the conversation
I'm hopeful
to be about.
that my schedule lines up so I can be in that one, because she's someone who unlike you, I never had the chance to interact with her personally.
Right.
Living in upstate New York, why would any presidential candidate feel the need to go there? They focus on the 4 or 5 states that are, early on in the primaries, and then, she didn't make it past Super Tuesday, right? So,
let's see. She did, but she didn't get anything.
But she didn't get
she
any.
Got
She didn't.
2 delegates in American Samoa. I think that was it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So
I have no idea when that's happening, just that it will be happening. So I will obviously let you guys know when I get that figured out. But Steven Crowder wanted Steven Crowder wanted her on his show, and she finally went on. That took 6 months, and that's Steven Crowder. Steven Crowder has 3 or 4 million.
He's probably one of the
subscribers or
largest
something.
conservative shows out there.
Yeah, so that took that much time. So, I've got almost 4,000 subscribers. So I'm kind of in a different, I do know her, so that adds a little bit of credibility, but still, I don't know when that's going to happen. Let's see, we got a question here. Just remember that people rely on government programs, and people who have paid into the government programs think of good ways to transition people and pay people back. So I've talked about this a lot, and this is actually something that I didn't realize Dave Smith was in agreement with me on, because I wasn't watching his show enough. But, he and I have both talked about how right now the focus should be on corporate welfare, ending the wars, ending the lockdowns, ending all the obstructions to free markets and people being able to work and do whatever they want. Removing occupational licensing laws. All those type of things have to go away before you go after welfare going to people who need it.
Yeah.
I've always said that as far as the welfare going to people who need it right now, let's see, last year, how many trillion did we give to the top 1%? It was a lot. I don't know what the figure is off the top of my head, but it was in the trillions. Compared to what was going to people, which was scraps.
Yeah, here's your $600 check.
So it's certainly not the priority right now. Obviously, the utopian goal is a completely voluntary society, but people should realize that's not happening tomorrow.
Well, you got to take steps to get there, and the first step is you got to start rolling back on the corporate stuff. I've long thought that we need to find a way to get more things moved to the local level rather than trying to do everything on the federal level. Then people don't feel so bent out of shape when, they take half your paycheck for your entire career, and then you're stuck relying on them for the last days of your life,
Right. Let's see. Well, just if you guys got any questions, throw them in the comments. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
What is your favorite kind of truck? So, as far as looks go, I really like the Kenworth W900. That is a classy looking truck. I've driven one once. That's what my boss has, actually. We all have T800Ws, so it's the W900 cab with the T800 slope nose. So you get the big cab, but you can see over the hood a lot more easily. It's not 20 feet long. I really like the T800W for driving. It's got the spacious cab, but it's really easy to see out of. The truck I have has a really long turning radius and wheelbase, so it was a big switch from what I used to drive. I used to drive an International W90, 9900i. It's the Eagle, the old Eagle model, and that was just a dual axle truck with an extremely short wheelbase and turning radius. It was, I mean, you could drive straight to the curb and then at the last minute just crank the wheel over and you'd be fine. But the truck I drive now, you have to start turning your tractor halfway through the turn or you'll hit the curb. But it's I do like Kenworth. I have driven a Peterbilt before, but not a lot. And from what I've heard about Peterbilts is they're nice, but they're expensive.
Yep. And
the cabs don't last as long, and it's kind of like if you have a Harley Davidson motorcycle, like it's the nice brand, but you pay a price for it. Where Kenworth is pretty reliable, and they're not as expensive, and they're nice. I like it. I like the Caterpillar engine. I miss those things. The C12. That's what I drove.
They've gone because of the new emission standards. Thank you, federal government, for
accomplishing nothing really as far as the environment goes. But
right.
just
now we all have DEF tanks and aftermarket or after exhaust and stuff. I drive a Freightliner Cascadia, and it's the older model. They came out with the new one shortly after I purchased I leased the truck that I have. The company I drive for has 3-ish trucks that you can pick from between the Peterbilt. I think it's a 479, which is a nice, it's a nice Cadillac. And if you're looking for a nice, comfortable cab and you're not interested in making the same amount of money that you could with the Freightliner is kind of your Ford truck. It's your cheap,
found on
no frills, they call it a freight shaker, but it's, like I said, the company I drive for, between that or the International, I drove one once. I didn't like the gear tunings. It was made to go 70. The gears were made up to go 70, and then I drove it, and it was, it kept shifting at the wrong points compared to the Freightliner that I'm used to. I only drove one for a couple of weeks because my truck was in the shop and I needed a loaner truck. But I like Freightliner. I think it gets the job done. It's the Ford truck. I'm in the process of purchasing this truck, so I'll have it paid off next year, and it'll probably have 750,000 miles on it, and maybe I'll be able to get it another 250,000 before it breaks down and I have to replace it.
You go.
That's life, right?
Yeah. So Mike is an owner operator. I am a company driver, which is a little bit different. So there's really basically 3 different types of drivers. There's company drivers, owner operators, and independent contractors. So Mike, he will own his truck, but he's working for a company.
Yeah, so the company I drive for retains the operating authority. So I'll still be driving their trailers around. They take care of all the dispatch. They take care of all of the, finding me a co-driver to train up and all those sorts of things. So I just have, I have the autonomy to say, I don't like this load. I want something different, or I'm going home. I don't want to come back for 2 weeks or, anything, all those sorts of things. But I have to deal with the financial consequences of my decision. So, that's the pros and cons of being a company driver versus a lease operator or owner operator. So,
yeah. So with me, I'm a company driver. So I literally don't own anything. Like my boss owns everything, owns the truck. He does all the maintenance. He does, buys all the fuel, all that type of stuff. All I do is show up and drive it, which is not as flexible, but I do have a good boss. I actually said this on Twitter yesterday. I gave him a shout out without naming him because I'm keeping him anonymous, but he has worked around this podcasting with me, which has been great. and he's actually a subscriber to my channel. I didn't tell him about it, and he found out about it, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, because I had to go on Dave Smith's channel. So I told him, hey, I need next Wednesday off, or I don't even need to be home, but I just need to be able to stop somewhere and record a podcast. And so then I ended up telling him about the channel. Then he looked it up, and he said, hey, I checked out your channel, and sometime I want to sit down and just talk about libertarianism, because I'd say like he's probably a Republican. I don't really know, but he's very intrigued by what I have to say. So that's great, having a flexible boss. But then, like, if we were independent contractors, that's when you own your truck, you own your own business. You are basically just finding your own loads, doing whatever you want. You're not tied to any company. That was my initial dream when I first, because I wanted to get there. I'm honestly not so sure right now, because it's just such a pain in the ass. It's such a headache. Like, if I do that, I won't be able to do the podcasting at the same time, because you know, my boss right now, he just takes care of all the overhead. I just show up and drive the truck, and that's kind of all I want to do right now. So but yeah, we're let's see, we're coming up on an hour here, so I guess we'll cut it off right here. But thanks to everybody who's been with us since Jump Street. And if you haven't been with us since Jump Street, thanks for being here too. Hopefully you'll be here through episode 200. But it's been an interesting journey. You know, I am, as I said, I'm grateful for to all these people for coming on my show, having me on their shows. I want to give a special shout out to Ryan Dawson, because I've actually known him before I knew Dave Smith. So he's not, a lot of these people who have come on after I've had Dave Smith on, because you know, that gave me publicity, and so then they were interested in me. But Ryan Dawson and I have been talking since before the election. So he was actually before I even got in contact with Dave Smith, and he was willing to come on ahead of time. He's going to keep coming on. I'm one of the 3 YouTube channels that'll platform him. So he's just he has to rein it in while he's live. And then, you know, once we kill the live stream, he can say everything he thinks, and it's not a problem. But I want to give a special thanks to him. And then, Mike, I'll just give you the last word, and then we'll kill it.
So one of these days I'm going to start my podcast. You know, I do have a YouTube channel that I have no content on yet, but it's called I Am a Truck Driver, or what do I know? I'm just a truck driver is how you find it. You can find me on Twitter at FarminMike1. Feel free to follow me. I'm still growing. I'm not quite as big as Reed Coverdale right now, but someday.
Someday, yeah.
Right?
Well, I'm proof that, you know, it doesn't take much, so. Well, yeah, guys, I got the link to his Twitter page in the description, so go follow him there. And we'll catch you on the next episode. The next episode is going to be Brian Nichols on Tuesday night. Tomorrow night, I'll be on Fightin' Friends. I think Eric Jackman might be joining us. I haven't heard yet. Then Tuesday, it'll be Brian Nichols. Thursday, I'm having Neocon Remover on. You guys might know him as Ludwig von Jesus from Twitter. And then the following Sunday, I'm going on Break the Cycle with Joshua Smith. Monday, Joshua's coming on my channel. I think Tuesday, I'm going on Clint's Liberty Lockdown channel. And then that Thursday, Tom Woods is coming on my channel. So make sure to stay tuned for that. Please like this video, share it. If you haven't subscribed, please do. Try to bring as many of your friends over here as you can. And we'll see you on episode 102.